Hello my friends, I'm Lucas and you are watching coldemonspl. It's time to start my next project, which will be interesting for all fans of what if tanks. As I had two similar models, which you can see by clicking on the open the box review link that is just being displayed above, for this movie I chose Jagdpanzer. The E-60 will be described as an article and you will likely see it in Military Modelcraft International, Steel Art or other model magazines. So, both models came to me from my friend who asked to build and paint them. He gave me a completely free hand in finishing, so I was free to approach the subject and only the sky was the limit. I collected metal trucks, barrels, resin exhaust and I was planning a little scratch to increase its value even more. First I cut all of the elements to reduce the amount of unnecessary plastic and, by the way, thoroughly checked most of the parts. The model is very simple without great detailing, and we can say that this is a base for upgrades and requires some extras to add on it. In general, you can build it in the weekend. In the beginning I started with the suspension bar and immediately noticed that the gluing surface was definitely too small. I was afraid that it might not withstand the tension. The solution was as simple as a toothpick. The wheels that were closer to the hull were drilled and I glued sticks into them, and I also drilled holes in the bar and further in the wall of the main body. The Tamiya drill is a really nice tool. It's highly recommended for everyone. As you can see, this solution worked perfectly. Yeah, 100% of efficiency. The outer wheels had a similar problem, but here I didn't want to drill in the long axles and decided to stick small pieces of plastic into the spaces between the wheels. In this way the chassis was glued together and very stable. The idler wheels also required additional work. I measured the gap using a piece of track. The thin piece of plastic did the trick and now the size was right. Before the correction there was no room for the tracks to fit perfectly. A different arrangement was out of the question because under normal conditions the guide teeth would go inside the wheel and not outside. I covered the free space with masking tape and hardened it with superglue. It was another quick upgrade to hide the imperfections. When we are at the wheels, it's time for tracks. The full model set for the late King Tiger is the best solution to enrich my model. So what is my way to put the whole set together fast and easy? Here it is! I have built a special and sophisticated tool by myself. Two metal angle bars which are about 20 cm long, the holes for screws were drilled at the ends. As you can see, the springs press the whole thing down. That's all. I put the links at the ends to keep the distance between the bars and now I add the links one by one, pressing them from time to time. When the section is ready I insert the wire to correct length, pull it out a bit and cut. After that I press it down because it cannot be seen. You can also close the holes with pieces of plastic, but it's a really huge work and generally it won't be visible. I did it once and it was a really long story. As you can see, it works perfectly and thanks to this I can put together the set between 60 and 80 minutes. As all we know, some sets require drilling in each link. Luckily I didn't have this problem here and most of the links were made correctly. When I was looking for a metal barrel for this model I wanted to find a 12.8 caliber, of course, and luckily I managed to find one. Now the most important thing was to adjust it to the plastic parts. It wasn't so difficult, the only problem was that the contact area was quite small and the barrel itself was heavy. On the imitation of the lock I attached a counterweight, which was the largest nut I could find. Now it was necessary to build a gun mantlet. The entire structure is based on plastic strips. First I glued two pieces to the barrel to have space, then I glued strips along the barrel as a base to create the actual cover. I formed the shape of the cover with plain masking tape and a bit of green stuff. Leaving it to dry I used the time to make the two coats of the easy cast and create a texture of the cast steel. 2 layers do the job and the most important thing is to do it accurately and not to cover details such as assembly screws. This solution can be diluted with water and dries very quickly. Additionally, you can speed it up with a hairdryer. If you don't have one, it's time to borrow it from your woman. Back to the mantlet. I covered it with 2 coarse easy cast layers and let them dry. After sanding, the effect wasn't as good as I needed, so I took my old Tamiya putty and covered it with one more layer. Next sanding and I'm almost there. Finally, the best thing is to install the muzzle brake. I love it. And the barrel is ready. Oh, and the last element. I don't know what its professional name is, but I suppose it would be used to carry the gun by train. Oh no, crane, sorry. I always like it on the models. Later I will add the weld seams, and now check the extra effects on the casting. Before I glued both parts of the hull together, I decided to cut off the unnecessary elements. Oops! Okay, this needs to be fixed. Fast sanding, a piece of plastic on the bottom and a smaller one on the top, and easy cast to fill the hole. And the problem solved. Sometimes such accidents happen, but there is nothing to dramatize. I always say that everything in plastic can be rebuilt. Now the texture for the entire front plate. I applied 2 coats again. Here you can see exactly how much it is needed. Sanding again, this time much stronger because we have an armor plate here, not a pure casting. I also finished the cover, with sanding of course. On each frame with parts we have small numbers that we can easily use. The trick is to cut them off as accurate as possible. Without a sharp knife there is no chance to do it. When they are ready, it's the best to stick them with an ordinary plastic glue and then even out with the same specifics that we used to make the casting texture. Delicious! These were supposed to be mounts to the side covers, but in my model I have a different idea. So now the top of the hull is ready to be glued to the bottom. I also added the rear side shields and the engine cover. And now work begins with the detailing of the entire model. A little here, a little there. First the items which are from Paper Panzer Productions and have been described as mystery brackets. For years it wasn't clear why Germans installed them, but recently Panzer Art explained this secret. Just look at these pictures and visit their Facebook wall. As I know there will be some article about it, but for now you have to trust me because I have seen some documents which were used to make this conversion. See the links in the video description and check the pictures of the real tanks. Okay, for me these brackets are needed for side covers. I slightly drilled them to make it easier to mount the plastic profiles. Of course there are also traces of the armor plates flame cutting. I always make them because they look realistic and truly speaking, we try to imitate the metal look of our model, right? In some places I cut larger grooves. Why? Because it's more interesting. Irregularity is even advisable. Why? Because it's more interesting. I smoothed all the cuts with thin glue. From the plastic profiles I prepared the frames for hanging the side covers. Later the ends will be bent a little. There are no perfect vehicles, only in the factory. Now we are gonna throw out those nasty periscope imitations. I found several identical ones that could be used here. I cut them to the correct size and glued the covers. Little things. When I was buying other sets with grills, I didn't know if they would fit for these models. Luckily they are perfect and I can recommend them if you want to enrich your model. Unfortunately the rest of the set is useless here. But wait, I used also chains and this small ring with the mesh. Yeah, both grills were glued with black AK glue. It's a slow drying adhesive. And it gives some time to properly position the parts. However, you have to be careful because it likes to leave traces on plastic. In the set from Paper Panzer Productions I have a resin exhaust with an additional towing device. I did a small upgrade by replacing the mounting screws on the covers. The new ones were punched from plastic and glued in places around the tubes. It was a bit of precision work, but it was worth of the time I spent. Each nut was nailed on the fresh and sharp hobby blade, dipped in the glue gently and added to the correct place. Then I sanded them lightly, checking the strength of the glue, cleaned them from the dust, and the exhausts were ready for assembly. Note the hole. It looks great with this chains-on locking bolt. It's a really nice upgrade kit for all of the German What If series heavy tanks. We can use them on E family, King Tigers, Jagdpanzers and Löwe.
Let's burn it. Be careful and do it at home.
The copper wire was needed to make a ladder. After firing and softening, it's easier to bend, straighten, cut, sand and glue. Here I decided to make this element by joining the individual parts with super glue. Next time we'll do some soldering. I took the dimensions of the ladder from my head, checking only if the width was adequate for the climbing person. It was a simple task. I was wondering more if the ladder would withstand bending. But a good cleanup of the parts gave a perfect result and everything held up nicely. I will say more. It was possible to gently bend it to imitate uncareful driving on reverse. And a bit more about exhausts. I decided to use Flamvernichters because I have always liked their appearance. Sounds strange, but what can I do? Additionally, I placed them in a rather unusual configuration, asymmetrically. If you look from the back and the side, you will see the strange settings in both cases. Please don't ask me for justification. In my opinion, they look awesome and that's it.
Kawa jest.
Okay, the break is over and the job is waiting. Those little screw holes were too small for me. I decided to drill and I was hoping that I wouldn't drill right through. Unfortunately, I did it 3 times. I punched the larger screw heads from the plastic and inserted them and secured with a thin glue. They looked much better. I also glued these 3 holes and managed to bring them out to the right look. One might ask why I didn't do it when the hull was still unglued. The answer is simple, I just forgot. Adding the metal bars was a piece of cake. Simple work, just a little drilling and we have the armament ready. As you can see, the flag from Master Model and the machine gun from RB Model are doing the job. The main part itself is not sophisticated, but luckily it will be almost completely hidden in the turret. And it will be movable. A bit of an upgrade to the exterior was necessary. This turret resembles the modern one from BMP, but the details that I added here are my artistic license. Metal lifting holders and a few plastic details enrich it, and there isn't much to say here. Everyone can see how does it look like. For me, the designers of this model seem to be lazy guys, but on the other hand, these empty surfaces give the opportunity to show off. And this is the result after building and adding to the model. Pretty cool, I like it. Hope you also like it, so click the like button and subscribe my channel if you haven't already. Done? Thank you. Thank you for not being a douche. It's good to know that there are still some nice people in this world. It's time to weld something. All the welding seams are made from green stuff. Of course, a little water is necessary, otherwise we won't be able to roll out the patty properly. First, thin sausages or snakes, whatever. Then fit them on the model and press the right shape. On this model as well as on E-60 I made C-shaped and oblong welds. Maybe someone who knows will let me know in the comments section what are they professionally called. So, a little bit of tinkering and it's ready. I also added small cubes for fenders similar to those we know from Tiger 1. To make them fast and easy I used the cutter from RP Tools. And more welding. Eureka XXL towing cables are a perfect solution, especially because in the kit were only plastic imitations and I threw them away in the beginning. The most important thing in the treatment is to gently clean the resin ends. A bit of glue on the rope and we can insert them into the holes, which are perfectly prepared and there aren't problems with fitting. From the leftovers of some other sets I use a piece of metal plate to make rope holders. First I heated them with a torch for softening the material. Then I bent them into a small U-shaped pieces and glued it to the model. Homemade photo etching. For the first time I had to deal with 3D printed handles, and I must say that I won't make typical photo etched elements anymore. The time is money, and this solution is undoubtedly a great help during work. The most important thing is to carefully cut them off and prepare for adding to the kit. Great quality and great details. The price isn't low, but it's really worth it. In addition to the typical towing cables, the set also includes cables for pulling trucks up while they are replacing or repairing by the crew. They are definitely thinner with smaller ends and I always try to arrange them in some interesting way, not necessarily on the handles intended for that purpose. Let's call it controlled disorder. The easiest way is to glue them to the model unless you want to paint them separately. From my experience I prefer the solution you see here because adding glue to the painted elements don't always roll out the way they are supposed to. One of the main cables was also glued to the kit and the second was planned to place on the exhausts. We are slowly approaching to the end, so I show you making hangers for the side covers. I have determined that there will be 5 armor plates on each side, but I won't add all of them. 2 for side are enough. I used 0.5mm sheet of plastic to cut them out. In real these plates would be around 12mm thick, so perhaps they would be sufficient to provide cover for the vehicle. From the inside I installed handles which were made from a thin metal plate. Each was supplemented with screws. To keep line and spacing even, I drilled through all the places where they were supposed to be. This helped the precise gluing of the nuts. I made the lower brackets from another piece of photo etched plate, which I cut and bent to the desired shapes. And finally a bit of super extra detailing. The small handles for attaching nets, branches or racks were bent from copper wire and glued to the hull. Later they are threaded through with thin wire, which in my experience almost always looks cool on models. The most important is its thickness. Remember, if it's too thick, it looks bad. Did I say that this is the end? Maybe. Okay, so this trick I will show you another time. The summary of this episode will be as short as 5 days of building this model. Whether fast or slow, judge for yourself. For me it's pretty fast. In the next episode we'll do painting, of course. Camo will be really spectacular, colorful and non-existent on real tanks. For now, many thanks for watching, subscribe my channel if you haven't already, post comments and click likes. And that's all for today, my friends. Cheers! Well, this happens when unauthorized people start playing with the camera.